evening. I'm Genesis Rojas.
And I'm Ryan Struzeri.
And I'm Jocelyn Rera.
And you're watching Dead Guys That Made a Difference.
Tonight, we report to you a number of events regarding the Civil War and the feudalism it has caused between the North and South boundaries of America. Tonight, we will be discussing multiple topics including the Lincoln and Douglas Senate debates, the causes of the American Civil War, and the social, political, and economic involvement of the Europeans, women, and the Africans in America. And also, we will be discussing the causes of the actual Civil War itself. Now, on to Ryan with the first topic.
Thank you, G-Reds.
Just because my name in Spanish means the plural form of red does not mean you have the right to call me that. So don't call me that.
Right. Duly noted. Yo, what up, dogs? I'm your main man, Ryan Struzeri, and here's the breaking news on Dead Guys That Made a Difference. Tonight, I'm going to tell y'all what fired up the Civil War. Let's just start with how the South was all like, we don't want no anti-slavery, and we sure don't need no North either. Cotton and other crops were demanded, because, the countries were all like, yo, America, my God, we need some cotton up in this joint. So my boys from Europe knew America was where it was at for all the plants and stuff. Cotton needed a warm climate to grow, and y'all know they got mad climate in the So, my boy Eli Whitney made the cotton gin, because he wanted to make some dough on his main land for southern growing. So the workers were like, since one of them can do hundreds at a time, let's make all them slaves captive and force them all to work. It took way less time than one person constantly picking cotton. Smart idea, but the North was all like, nah, not in my crib. And the North rejected the whole idea, and that's what fired up the Civil War. And now we're going to kick it to my friend Jocelyn.
Greetings, viewers. I just want to inform all of our interested watchers out there on the involvement that Africans, women, and the Europeans had in our nation's terrible Civil War in 1861 to 1865. As my friend Ryan talked about earlier, the Africans played a major part in the occurrence of the Civil War. The North and the South were divided over the slavery and where it should and shouldn't be allowed in the growing nation. The North wanted slavery to either stay where it originated in the South and just keep them content, or completely abolish it throughout the nation. The South, if it wasn't obvious, wanted to expand their territory as to have more land for slaves to work, and therefore more slaves to work for them. Women played their parts too. Some served as spies and nurses for the war. Many took to housekeeping chores and more while the men were fighting, and some even had the courage to disguise themselves as men and fight alongside their families in the battles. Europeans also tried to help the South and provide supplies for the armies, but the North didn't let them recognize that the South was its own nation. Lincoln, president at the time, allowed for a blockade of Confederate ports to stop the foreign nations from engaging in the war. The Union was successful in their attempt to control the South that advance of improvement along with their resources won them the war. Back to you, Genesis.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for that completely sane and comprehensible report. Moving on. Springfield lawyer Abraham Lincoln debates his way against 1860 presidential candidate Senator Stephen A. Douglas. Lincoln uses his faith and quoted from the Bible, Mark 3:25, to establish his argument. A house divided against itself cannot stand. He meant slavery and free labor could not coexist, since the government would end up from having to tolerate a half-slave and half-free nation. To start off, he made the accusation on Douglas that his Kansas-Nebraska Act and the Dred Scott decision formed an alliance to legalize and spread slavery nationwide.
Nationwide is on your side.
Ahem.
Sorry, just trying to help a brother out.
Okay, first of all, don't touch me. And second of all, why don't you go somewhere else and help out?
Fine. Douglas assertively attempted to portray his opponent as a black Republican because he wanted to make it seem as though Lincoln's goal was to provoke a civil war, replace slaves for their debts, and equalize blacks and whites socially and politically. In order to dodge Douglas and his statements, he mentioned that the only reason he supported the fugitive slave law was because he didn't want slavery to spread. As the discussion continued, they reciprocated their arguments. Douglas claimed that slavery was failing because it required structure, support, and reform. On the other hand, Lincoln wanted to convince the viewers that Douglas was trying to right a wrong when only the federal government had the power to abolish it. Lincoln cleverly hints to the South that he still had no intention of erasing slavery where it existed, just that he wanted not for it to spread across the entire nation.
All right, enough. You're messing up my entire script. You're like throwing up all over it. I'll handle it from here. Okay, so not only did he show an attempt to negotiate with the South, but Lincoln mediated for both sides when he assured his loyalty to the North. He did this by reestablishing his opposition toward the political and social equality of both races. His argument was that if Northerners allowed slavery to freely spread, it would dominate the nation and completely wipe out the laboring population. Douglas saw blacks as unequal to whites, and as a result, he abhorred Negro citizenship. He clearly states this in one of the debates. I want citizenship for whites. Now, this is the controversial part.
Oh, I know this one. Lincoln makes note of his opposition to socially and politically equalizing white and black races. He does this even though he already mentioned that he believed the fact that blacks still had the right to life, liberty, and the fruits of their own labor.
Lincoln asked Douglas to confess his association and support with the Dred Scott decision, which denies Congress the authority to nullify slavery from a state with popular sovereignty.
Douglas then defends himself by pointing out the inhabitants of a state and their ability to decline any laws that aided slaveholders and their rights.
Well, Douglas failed to realize that Lincoln set him up. And no matter what he could reply with, Douglas had to choose between which side he wanted to alienate and ultimately estrange.
And since the Dred Scott decision allowed slavery into the West, saying people could foreclose slavery against the court's ruling was considered preposterous.
I see how it is. Although Douglas won re-election, Northerners and Southerners were both insulted and affected by his announcement.
Okay then. Well, in the end, Republicans outpolled the Democrats, but Democrats still managed to manipulate the voting districts and ultimately won control of the state legislature. Despite his failure to attain Senate, this discussion gained Lincoln a great deal of respect for his conviction, credibility for his knowledge, and recognition of his capability to be president in 1860. His confidence shone through a response he gave to describe how this loss was but a slip and not a fall. This, in turn, gave people a chance to trust him because it revealed his determination, which then concludes our wonderfully explained story on the contents of the Civil War. So once again, thank you all for watching.
Dead
Guys that made a difference!
Bloopers! Go.
Good evening. You're watching Nevermind.
No!
You're good. I can
Go.
continue the glasses.
You're talking.
Go, just go, just go. Wait 2 seconds and go.
You can cut it?
Yep.
Good evening.
Erasing slavery where it existed. Just that he wanted it not for it to I don't know how to say that word.
Metastasize.
Spread. You
Metastasize.
can say spread.
So,
Jocelyn, we're trying to do something here. My gosh. Tonight, we report to you a number of... Okay. Tonight, we report to you the Civil War and its... Oh, my... So, we will be discussing multiple topics, including the Lincoln and Douglas. Senate debates. Okay. Forget the glasses. Let's do something.
I can't believe you just threw your glasses.
I'm gonna